Oh, Steve, we're super excited to have you on. I got to ask though, Steve, before you did your family, when they said, "Oh my God, you're doing a podcast today," break a leg? Did they wish you well?
They did not wish me well in that way because it's a very sensitive topic right now. And
And
first of all, I appreciate
why would that
being.
be?
I'm grateful to be here with you guys, and I'm grateful to have walked into my home office today in order to have this interview because back in December, the day after Christmas, I went out the bright idea of going roller skating with my wife and two daughters, and there were moments though, Chris. There were moments where I was like, should I do this or no? Like even at the rink, as I was lacing up the skates, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this today. So I put the skates on. I go out there in the rink. I was like, I don't want to be that guy, right? I want to be a part of the family and be a cool dad. Well, that didn't get me very far. There was as I was skating, there was a little boy who was on one of those assisted little rollers. I don't know what they call them, but he's rolling on those. He still falls. He falls in front of me. I swerve to get around him so I don't, throw all my body weight on this little boy. And I lose my balance. My right leg gets caught underneath me and I fall and hit the floor really hard. And I hear my leg snap and take off my skate as soon as I could. My leg starts to swell immediately. My youngest daughter sees me. She asks me, what help I needed. She goes and gets my wife. They pull out a wheelchair, so I'm embarrassingly being rolled off the roller skate, the rink, right, in a wheelchair, and then immediately rushed to the ER after that. And so I've been down, right? I have been down I have been down, really. I mean, since the end of December, and the doctor just cleared me to for full activity last Thursday. So, I still have to regain all, like really good strength in my leg, my calf and my quads. But yeah, just got cleared last Thursday. So it's been a long road back to recovery. And I'm retired from roller skating. I thought I was Usher at one point before, realized that Usher is much cooler and much more skilled at moving than I am. So I'm letting that go.
Oh my God. I remember when I was a teenager, preteen, must have been preteen, like junior high, and I broke my arm. And I remember it took 3 weeks to heal, whatever. But now here we are as adults, and it's like, 24 weeks. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I'm like, and I was sitting there thinking, it's so funny that the day this happened, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about the power of positive thinking. And they talked about doing some studies on people who had broken bones or torn ligaments, and so a part of the study was that people who had broken bones and torn ligaments, they had two different groups. One group, they had given them the longest time to recovery, and then the other group, they had given them the shortest time to recovery. And so they noticed, like with these groups, that the group that they had given the shortest time to recovery healed and recovered faster. And then the group that they had given the longest time to recovery, recovered in, either that time or longer. And so yeah, I was talking about the power of positive thinking. And I've been, in the beginning of this process, I was thinking very positively. And I felt like, the first few weeks, 4 weeks into this, the doctor's like, oh my gosh, you're healing really fast. This is fantastic. It was great initially. About 6, by the time I went back for my, in the 7th week, the doctor was like, well, the growth isn't happening anymore. I was like, what is going on? Like, what happened? Like, I don't know. I guess, after a while I started getting super discouraged too. I was like, this is never going to heal. Like, this bone's never going to heal. So finally they're like, the callus is formed, everything's okay. But after 6 months, right? So some of it is just because I'm getting older. I say getting. Yeah. If you ask my daughters, they're like, hey, this guy he's almost in the grave. So
you're dust, basically, is all you are. Yeah.
Exactly.
The half full glass, though, Steve, is that when you're traveling, you're talking about the fact that you're traveling a lot.
Yes.
You certainly can go up to the desk just before they start to announce, pre-boarding, and you just say, do you handle, is it okay if people need a little bit more time? Is that part of pre-boarding? And they'll go, oh yes, Steve, no problem whatsoever. Just stand over there and you'll be first to get on the plane. And the advantage of that is you get to put your bag up, before it gets too crowded and you lose it. So
I like it. I like it, Jerry.
saying.
I need to do that. I haven't done that in the airport yet. I did do it when my wife and I went to New York. So we were. It was a super long line. We went to go see MJ the musical. It was a really long line outside, and they said if anyone has any physical limitations, please bypass the line. That was me, Chris. They were like, please bypass the line and come to the front. And so I hobble up there, and they're like, come on, go ahead, sir. I was like, thank you.
They didn't ask for anything. No doctors. No, just wobble on up.
That was it.
They'll never ask for that doctor thing. They just aren't going to do that.
Yeah, they didn't. So, they were like, all we need is for you to say you need
it
help.
Helps though if you do a little side shuffle as you walk up. That's all. I try that part.
Oh boy. Well, look, speaking of shuffle, I'm going to play a song that we can dance to as we start the show. How about that? All right, here we go.
CXR Channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is a Recruiting Community Podcast. You got weekly insights and updates in the form of, well, it's a conversation. Today, Jerry and I have Steve White, who is the VP of Talent Acquisition over at BECU. He is also, full disclosure, he is also a board member at CXR Foundation. That is a 501c3 nonprofit that we have formed to basically improve the industry and help TA professionals and, of course, their families. Now, Steve's going to join us today to share about enhancing talent acquisition at his organization, both from a perception and a performance standpoint. But a few things. Jerry, hello. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Life is good.
A couple of housekeeping items for Jerry and I. We're streaming on the YouTube, the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch. But look, the best place you can go and check us out, cxr.org/podcast, where you can see past as well as future episodes. If you happen to be joining us today on LinkedIn, where we're also obviously live streaming, say hello. If you've got questions for Steve, if you just want to comment, you can do that. We can throw those up on the screen, make you part of the show. We'll make you famous, interweb famous. What do you think of that?
I think that's great.
Yeah. So as a reminder, it's an ad-free labor of love that we do this. Nobody pays to be on here. They're invited because they're doing cool stuff, or we just kind of want to shine a light on what they're doing. But Jerry, speaking of shining a light, we have a little bit of activity that's going on this week. Yeah. We're doing Spotlight Day.
Oh, that Spotlight Day is one of the many things that we're doing this week. But I'm going to put certainly it's
URL up there really quickly.
It's the most interesting one.
So we're talking about 6. I think we're doing. Yep. There we go. There's a little bit of lag going on today. Sorry. Hope we don't have any lag on Spotlight Day. So you can check it out. Who's going to be featured? I think we got 6 hours where we're going to be streaming. It's kind of like a telethon marathon as we go through that. Views and demos and live discussions. It'll be live streamed here, obviously, but also on LinkedIn. You can check out who's going to be featured in that. We got a little URL on the screen at cxr.org/spotlight. That's going to show you who's going to be featured throughout the day. We're doing it in 2 segments. You can find the details out on the Career Crossroads page, the LinkedIn page. And you can also find the details, obviously, on any of our pages because we're sharing that too. But we hope folks will join us for that. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. It's great.
Yeah, we should have a blast. I don't think anybody's done one of these that I can think of. But if somebody's watching and knows of any similar activity or event that's been done like this, let us know because we'd like to check it out. All right, good stuff. So with that, we're going to welcome back Steve. Let's see if the button. There he goes. Let's move you over here. So you are in the spotlight, sir. Steve, welcome back.
Awesome. Hey, thank you.
Look,
thank you. It's an honor to be
Steve,
here with you guys.
All good. So for those who maybe don't have the pleasure of already knowing who you are, Steve, why don't you give us kind of escalator pitch? Who is Steve White, and why are we listening to Steve today?
So I've been in talent acquisition for the better part of about 16 years, so about 17 years now. I actually started my career in TA. Actually started my career in recruiting by recruiting athletes, right? So I was recruiting athletes who were making the transition from college football to the NFL. So a sports agent, as most people would call it. And I always say I was chasing athletes all over the country. Really enjoyed that, the recruiting aspect of it, but had a feeling that it couldn't last forever, considering my travel schedule and some of the things that were involved, and some of the athletes are real divas. And so really like taking a step back from that and raising a young family at the time, I needed to really take a step back from that. I missed my first wedding anniversary because the NFL draft second day landed on my first wedding anniversary. So that was a mess. So I made the pivot into the staffing industry. That was an opportunity for me to be able to control my own income and enjoy, some of the aspects of being a recruiter, which I really loved. And I went to work for Apple One. Apple One is, a privately held staffing company, and really enjoyed my time there. And worked for Apple One in California, then moved to Texas with Apple One, and then made the pivot after the Great Recession, right, with all the things that were happening in that time frame into corporate recruiting. And so I've been doing that since. I'd say the coming to BECU has been great, but before that, probably the most influential place I've been is about roughly 6.5 years I spent over at Lockheed Martin. And so really enjoyed my time at Lockheed. It was fast and furious, a lot of work going on there. I had recruiters who had at times 200 recs at a time, and so got a chance to really lead through some complex situations, a lot of workforce planning, ebbs and flows throughout the time at LM, and then got a chance to lead talent acquisition compliance and data analytics and those sorts of things that really been influential in some of the changes that were being made in TA at Lockheed. And so a lot of people think like, you're a part of a big company, and you guys know this already. You all have been a part of super large organizations, but and many people listening have too. But at Lockheed, I was able to make a significant difference, right, and some changes. And so I really enjoyed that time there. And so left Lockheed, and at the end of 2021, for all intents and purposes, 2022 was the last week of the year, which is when Lockheed shuts down. And so, and then pivoted over to Microsoft for a very brief period of time, and then made my way over to BECU. And so BECU is the fourth largest credit union in the country. And so there are 3 other credit unions which have really large bases, like Penn Fed, Navy Fed.
Yep.
Customers that are coming into, or new members, I should say, as the credit union world describes it, coming into the organization and being a part of their org every year through the armed forces and through the government. And so we have the Boeing employees, right? Initially, we're the Boeing Employees Credit Union is our full name, but we're a separate entity for Boeing, so we still are very closely connected to Boeing. But then in addition to that, we have 1.5 million members as well, and so and then about $30 billion in managed assets. So BECU is a very well-run organization. Super excited about what we have going on. There's a lot of things that we're doing and a lot of things that we're changing. We had a new CEO at the end of 2022. I joined BECU toward the end of 22, really about fourth quarter of 22, and have really we've been on a journey to improving and enhancing talent acquisition at BECU since then, and I'm really excited about what we've done, and I'm excited about the future because we still have a long way to go.
I love that. Well, and I love the background there. I mean, it's kind of like I was inserting Jerry. Like I know when we met you and on that journey, and your move from Lockheed, I had forgotten about the stint at Microsoft.
Yeah, very brief.
Yeah.
There's a blip on the radar. That's probably why, Chris. It was really, really short. Love loved, even as short as it was, I appreciated my time at Microsoft, made some really great relationships. I think, people are like, when I talk to people about my time at Microsoft, some people are probably surprised because I can rattle off like different people's names and things that were going on, the hiring initiatives that were happening at Microsoft, even in a short period of time, because I like to embed myself into the business as much as possible as soon as I get to a place. And so, and Microsoft certainly is a complex business, complex organization.
Were you there, Steve? Was it Pataski? Was Pataski was headed, or John?
It was so I worked for or in the organization with Brett Baumel. So Brett was head of, or is still head of engineering talent acquisition. Brett's fantastic. He's got a heart for people and heart for diversity and inclusion. Phenomenal leader and very, very connected. And so Brett, Lauren Gardner was leading all of TA enterprise wide. And then Brett was the engineering TA leader, and I was in engineering talent acquisition at Microsoft. And one of the things there, I think at the time, the TA organization was about 2,700 people, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it was pretty massive.
Yeah, not small. So
engineering TA alone was about 700.
Yeah, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. So you've been part of some, as you mentioned earlier, you've been part of some really big organizations, and we're going to talk about perception and performance for a few minutes. But Steve, and we can just jump right in. I mean, I guess, and we can be specific to BECU, or you can kind of share some stuff from your rich history within TA. But do you have key strategic changes that you'd share that you've implemented within TA to kind of improve both perception and performance, and what motivated that?
I think, I would lean on BECU a bit because when I first got here, one of the things that I heard as I was doing my listening tour within the business with like our CTO at the time and different, leaders throughout the organization was that, TA was slow. It's not uncommon, right, for some leaders to say that. Sometimes it's a false sense of the reality, and sometimes it can be real, right? Sometimes it's perceived, and other times it is true. And to be honest with you, here it was in many cases it was true. Like we were moving at a slower pace. We were moving at our own speed within TA, and not really moving at the speed the business wanted and needed us to. And so that was one. The other one was that we abdicated our responsibility, right? We didn't take ownership for our work, and so that was a big piece as well. The quality was another complaint from the business also, and then there was this overarching mistrust that existed, and so no one came right out and said, "Hey, we just don't trust your team," but it was very evident as at the time. The chief technical officer or technology officer, excuse me, had allocated $500,000 in the budget to hire agency or to hire people through agencies, right? And so they were focused on hiring through agencies more so than using the internal talent acquisition team. And relative to the size of our organization, we have a decent sized TA team. We're about 30 people roughly. So the organization size is about 3,100. So when you think about that, I mean, just to dumb it down, I mean, it's 1% of the staff. So we're sitting. I mean, we're pretty large TA team for the size of the org. And so for them to say we're not going to use the internal TA team, we're going to use agencies. That was a bit of a heartbreaking to me, and I feel like I take it as a loss. I'm a very competitive person, not a competitive roller skater, but competitive in other areas. And so
you're the usher of TA, but you're not the usher of the roller rink, is what I hear you say. But you're right. But it's not uncommon, I think, in organizations where you have functions right within the business who have a break in trust, or just think the TA team, regardless of how big they are, can't get there quick enough. It's easier to just go hire somebody to hire somebody.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember having a conversation with one of the executives within tech, and this person, I remember telling them, I would like to reduce your dependency on agencies. And this was their response. No, I didn't freeze. That was literally how they responded. They didn't say anything. And so it was just, they didn't really care about, like, they didn't care about what our plans were. They didn't care about what we were thinking. It was just, you know what, we don't trust you all to do this work. And it was a bit disappointing, disheartening to me, but I was like, you know, I'm going to take this as a personal challenge, and for our team to take this as a personal challenge to really drive this change. And so, so we really focused on, you know, we really focused on how we can make the change within the organization and really change our own behaviors.
Yeah.
So then we could go about impacting the business. And so about 3 months later, that same person looked at me and said, you know, I thought you were crazy when you said, literally is what they said, I thought you were crazy when you told me that, but now I see where you're going. And so a lot of that was just really changing what we did internally within TA, right? Focusing on our own behaviors. We have cultural beliefs within talent acquisition. And then we have 4, and it's always improve, own it, growth mindset, and drive excellence. And so always improve is a focus on like how we, you know, focus on the ways we do our work, right? And how we produce that work, how we focus on our work, how we think about our work. And then, you know, how can we continuously improve the way, you know, we produce our work overall. And so, that has been a tremendous area that we focused on. Own it, because we said, you know, we were told that we abdicated our responsibility, right? That we didn't take ownership for our work. And so we really focused on shifting that narrative and really focused on owning the work, whatever is in our hand, whatever we have responsibility for, whatever we see, we can, you know, really look at that and drive it. So I think someone just asked, can I repeat them? So it's always improve, own it, growth mindset, and drive excellence.
There you go.
And so, we're really, you know, focused on, you know, those things. The third thing, right, is something that at Microsoft they do super well. The growth mindset. Satya Nadella, as the CEO of Microsoft, is setting a growth mindset within that organization. He always, you know, there's articles out there where Satya Nadella talks about, you know, he'd rather have learn-it-alls than know-it-alls, right? And so, like, really creating a culture of learning, right, of experimentation, of growth, of, you know, being able to develop new skills, and not having that fixed mindset. And so, so we've really focused on that and are really driving that, really focusing on improving that. And then drive excellence is one area that I really, really am focused on and passionate about. And that's, I read a book a while back by a guy named Horst Schulze. He's the founder of the Ritz-Carlton. And Horst Schulze wrote a book called Excellence Wins. And I recommend that to anyone who, you know, is doing anything in life. If you just want to improve, you know, your life, just, hey, everybody should read that book. I mean, it's really a phenomenal book. And so, you know, certainly Horst Schulze grew up in an area where he didn't even have hotels around him. He didn't know really what a hotel was. He had never experienced a hotel, but had this dream of becoming a hotel manager, right? And so at 15, he goes off and works in a hotel, and he runs into a gentleman at that hotel, the maitre d', who is what he refers to as the man of excellence. And he learns this way of excellence from this gentleman that he's working with, and realized and recognized how well this gentleman served the people that would come into the hotel, how well he, you know, knew those individuals and really sought to understand their needs. And so Horst Schulze realized, he was like, you know, that gentleman made himself pretty much equal with the people that were coming in. He didn't see himself as a you know, just a servant, so to speak. He saw himself as a gentleman serving ladies and gentlemen. So Horst Schulze came up with the saying of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, which is why if you go to the Ritz-Carlton, right, there's budget from everyone from a runner all the way up to the general manager to be able to support the guest and take care of the needs, and maybe even, you know, provide a credit to an individual who's staying at the Ritz. And so it goes back to that level of excellence. Even my pleasure at Chick-fil-A came from Horst Schulze speaking to the Chick-fil-A executive staff, right? And so just some of those things, just the little smaller things in the mindset that we're looking to shift in our organization and really make to drive excellence, right, in what we do. More so than just being a transactional function in organization. I think the business has seen talent acquisition as being transactional. Sometimes we see ourselves as being transactional, as in like we get a position, we fill a position, we get a position, we fill a position, and it needs to be
Well,
so
order
much
takers
more than that.
to your point of just serving, right? Yeah,
Certainly,
very reactional.
certainly, absolutely, and we want to be an organization that adds value, and we know TA adds value, right? We want to be an organization and a group that adds value to the organization that we support, which is, at BECU, we don't call the business customers. We don't call them clients. We call them partners, right? And so, because we want to be ladies and gentlemen, working with ladies and gentlemen, right? We don't want to have the perspective of making ourselves small going into a conversation with the leader, no matter how high they are in the organization. We need to be able to be on the level playing field so we can add value to that particular conversation. And I think the other thing too is that we want to be business people with TA expertise and not just TA people who support the business. And I think that's a mindset shift that we all really have to experience and make sure we're toward.
I think one of the first things I learned from Jerry in early days, Jerry, when we started working together, is that there is power in vocabulary, right? There is power to giving a name to something, a word to something. And I think the fact that you have removed your organization, even internally, has removed customer, right? You're talking about members and partners within that relationship piece, I think is very powerful and probably takes a little bit of that credit.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does help us shift, even as people are saying, at sometime within our group, like I'll hear some of our folks say, oh, the client or the customer. I'm like, well, your partner, and I want to correct that, not in a way, not as like, oh, we need to overcorrect what people are saying, but to your point, Chris and Jerry, I mean, language is important. Yeah. And it helps us to think about the work we're doing in the right way, so that we can perform at the level in which we want to or we set out to. And so, just like I always use the example of Starbucks, right? There's a HBR piece from a while back where it talks about how Starbucks train their customers, and Starbucks customers would come in and say, I want a small, whatever caramel coffee. And they're like, hey, can we get a tall caramel macchiato? Right. And so Starbucks is shouting that out to make sure that customers understand, like, this is how you order here. And it has created such a, it's a culture, right, amongst the baristas, the workers at Starbucks, and the customers. So
reflects an attitude.
Yes.
I looked at all of those four things that you mentioned, and each one reflects a kind of an attitude that we're bringing to the party here. Yes. And it reminds me of the fact that Chris and I, when we talk to potential members, we mention four things that we want to surround ourselves with: people who are passionate about recruiting, compelled to improve, have some critical thinking skills to challenge one another, and finally willing to share unconditionally.
Yes,
those are characteristics of a community that are very positive, and you'd hope or expect that they would exist in any community.
Yes.
But fundamentally, more than anything else, they're reflecting an attitude, and it sounds like you've found that piece for you, that formula that helps people, measure themselves against four things. They don't need people telling them; they can see whether they're doing it or not.
That's a huge. It's been a real big focus of ours, and we open every meeting by recognizing one another using those four things too, Jerry. And so, we say, I'd like to recognize Chris for demonstrating own it. And then there's a story that comes along with it to share how Chris demonstrated own it. I'd like to, recognize Jerry for demonstrating a growth mindset. And I use that with you, Jerry, because you're a heavy learner. You're always learning, right? So those things, right, are just, those are ways that we're celebrating one another, and then setting that those cultural beliefs in our hearts and in our minds so we can drive it forward.
I do think more of us need to think about how we institutionalize the recognition of people that are exhibiting those behaviors, that are owning the attitude, if you will.
Right.
Great.
Well, okay, so then let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, so I heard both of you have said measure, right? So I guess, Steve, how are you measuring the success of those enhancements within the TA structure, within the confines of that? Because it can't just be we're recruiting faster. I think I'm gonna pull the rug out from under you. It's super easy to measure how much money no longer goes to an agency. That's a great win, but that's kind of an easy one. Are there metrics or maybe even feedback mechanisms you found that are pretty effective for what you guys are doing?
So we're this year in 2024, we've set in what's behind me here. It's kind of hard to see because my head is blocking it, but it's what we call our P3 equals 100, and I'll lean over awkwardly so everyone can see it.
There you go. There you go.
It's a performance precision partnership, and it's what we call P3 equals 100. And Jerry pointed out it should be PQ equals quality, which I love, and I should have consulted with Jerry before.
Always consult with Jerry. You got to always.
I know. The smart people do, and so yeah, it was good feedback, great perspective, and so what we're doing is performance is really, as Kent Hepfinger, who's one of the TA leaders on the team, has called it, is a pace of performance, right? And it's so focused on our urgency, and urgency isn't just speed. I say urgency is resilience, right? How we're approaching the work. And so, like, are we approaching the work in the right way? Are we approaching the work with the right perspective and mindset, with the lead measures in mind, right? So many people in talent acquisition, people have been measuring time to fill forever, and time to fill is a poor lag measure. That you can't, once you see it, you can't impact it anymore, right? You can work to change it in the future. And so we're focused on lead measures that impact those lag measures. So performance is a measurement that really focuses on how long does it take us to deliver qualified candidates to the hiring leader. For sourcers, it's Chris Carver, as you've seen comments from Chris Carver pop up throughout. He's sourcer extraordinaire on our team, one of the great sources on our team. And so he, we've got a time frame that has, so for recruiters, it's 9 days, right? Nine days to deliver qualified candidates to the hiring leader. For sourcers, it's 18 days. For our executive recruiter, Sydney, it's 18 days as well. And so we're really focused on how, like, that time frame in which we can deliver candidates to the hiring leader. And then we've done that to back into what our ideal timeline is, in terms of when we should be closing a requisition out at the end. And so that's our first measurement as a team. The second one is precision, and it's focused on, for recruiters in the corporate and tech space, it's focused on hiring manager to interview ratios. And so a percentage, which is 65%. And so 65% hiring manager to interview ratio. We want to deliver quality. We don't want to send a bunch of candidates to the leader and have the leader cull the candidates for us. At that point in time, the leaders become the recruiter. And while we want leaders to have a mindset that understands talent acquisition and is empathetic to the work we do and is really engaged and focused on that work, we don't want the leader to be the recruiter. We want the leader to be the leader.
And Steve, are you talking about, I want to be real clear for everybody who's listening and watching, like, so when you say 60+%, are you talking about submitted and accepted for interviews? You talking about interviews that, okay. All right. So
when we submit a candidate to a leader, 65% of those candidates should pass through to a team.
Got it.
Yes, sir. And so that's the precision measure for corporate and tech, for our high volume spaces, contact center and retail, for our neighborhood financial centers, folks who are working in those spaces. It's interview to offer ratio. So that's 45% right now, interview to offer ratio. So the individuals who are individuals who are interviewed, 45% of those individuals we expect to go to offer. And then our last measure, that last P, is partnership. And the focus there is that we have strong partnership across the business. And so for recruiters, it's with the hiring leader. And it's not, would you work with this? We send a survey to hiring leaders, and the survey isn't, would you work with this recruiter again? Did you like working with this recruiter? We may have some hiring leaders who are listening to this. I don't really care if there's a like on working with the recruiter. I do care if the partnership is strong, because sometimes you may not like the way someone's navigating through the process, but it's what's best. The way they're handling the situation is what's best for BECU. And so we're focused on what's best for the organization. Sometimes that doesn't make people feel comfortable. And so would you work with this recruiter again is not something we really care about. We want to ensure that partnership is strong and we can get to that place, but it's not about it's less about feeling and more about, what activity, what actions are we taking in the process. So digital recruiter conducting what we call a recruitment strategy consultation. We don't call it an intake meeting. Intake meetings remind me of when my kids were younger and I'd take them to the hospital. And the first person I would see at the ER when they were sick is the intake counselor. And that person is just sitting there asking, important job, certainly, but it's just not who we are as a talent acquisition team. A very important job. But they ask you, can you pay for this visit? Essentially, what's your insurance information? What's the illness? They're collecting information to pass on to the people who will diagnose your issue.
Yeah.
We are the people who will diagnose your issue. We are the people who are going to treat the issue. We're not the intake people. So we call it a recruitment strategy consultation because it's more focused on, strategy, consulting from a recruiter and sourcer perspective, and then it's setting expectations. And so our sourcers participate in that meeting as well with the recruiter across the board. And the sourcers come in with data. They come in with a beautiful map that shows, where, what the addressable market looks like for that particular position. And then our ultimate goal is to ensure that we go into every recruitment strategy meeting with even though I called time to fill a poor metric earlier, we do come in with our goal is to come in with historical time to fill so we can say, hey, what do you want to optimize for as John Vlastelica so gracefully puts it on a regular basis, speed, quality, or cost, right? And so we come in and our goal is to come in and say, if a role is taken historically 85 days to fill and the hiring leader then turns around and says, I want to optimize for speed, it's like, well, you're going to have to do something very different this time around than you've done the last several times. Like, what is that going to be? And so it can open up the door for more strategic level conversations. So
what I love you've done there too, Steve, is you bringing in the sourcers with the recruiters, right? Everybody's in the same room and they're having the same conversation. They're looking at the same graphics. They're looking at the same reports that come out of that. You're bridging trust that everybody's all in that piece together. I think that's a big challenge that a lot of organizations don't figure out how to overcome.
And I say kudos to the sourcing team, folks like Chris. Their sources are across our team, and Marvin Smith, who leads sourcing for BECU. And Marvin really, focuses on what that meeting is going to look like. And for the team who's on the call, like Marvin's probably sent out 10 different iterations of what that sourcing or what that recruitment strategy consultation deck looks like. But we go on with the deck. We want to make it feel like, leaders really enjoy that executive recruiter experience that they get, right? When an executive recruiter comes in with the deck, they're sharing all their information. And we want to make sure every recruiter, sourcer engagement with the hiring leader feels similar to that, right? Where we're engaging on a strategic level that adds value to the business and helps leaders to understand that we're here to really understand and support that need, and that the internal talent acquisition team can add value more so than the other teams. So,
you can see me smiling when you mention Marvin. I just think he's been around a while and he's a great mentor.
Yeah, Marvin's fantastic. He's been a phenomenal addition to the team. He's added so much value. We've got a great. I mean, we really have a great team, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, I'm super excited. We were bringing in sourcing. Chris, I was fortunate enough to hire Chris, who is just really, I mean, he's been great. And then we brought in Marvin after that. And Marvin's just really been thinking about like different ways that we can really change the sourcing engagement in our process and build trust within our team as well as with the business. And then Kim Chanthorne, who leads our corporate and tech recruiters who had worked for me previously. We worked together before. And so she's done a really great job of driving work there. And I mentioned Ken Hepfinger earlier, who leads our high volume space, and he's really done a phenomenal job of driving change there. So I'm really thrilled about the work that we've been able to do. And we still, always in my mind, I don't think I've said this to the team in a while. I think we're about 30% of the way there. So hopefully that doesn't pressure anybody on the team who's on the call, but I think we still have a long way to go to really get to the place that we want to be to drive change for the business. And, our vision in TA is we catalyze the growth and transformation at BECU, helping us to become the leading financial services organization in the nation.
So Steve, it's a lot of change. You walk into an organization that trust is broken. There are complaints of speed. There are complaints of quality. Money is flying out the door because they're going somewhere else,
Yes.
even when you've got a large team. And you come in and say, I got this. Like we're going to build a team. We're going to restructure. We're going to refocus. We're going to do all of these things. So, and you're doing it. You're crushing it.
Yes.
My question to you is biggest challenge. What was the biggest hurdle to overcome as you say, look, we're getting ready to go through some transformation. We're getting ready to take on big change here. What was there one you didn't expect that just kind of, kicked you in the gut and you weren't ready for? Was there a big challenge there you can share with us?
This is a tough one, Chris. I think I would say trust, right? I operate with trust is given, mistrust is earned. That's that's how I operate in my personal life. That's how I operate at work. And so everybody doesn't operate that way, right? I think a lot of people operate with mistrust is given and you have to earn their trust. And so, really working to build that trust and trust is earned in drops and it's lost in buckets, right? So we're earning, trust as we're working through and trying to build, this new strategy and this new way of thinking and this new way of working in drops at a time.
Yeah.
And we don't have a drop sort of time frame. We're working on this executive time frame that's like, hey, we need change today. And I think for the people on the team in TA, it wasn't probably a good enough understanding of, hey, the business is wanting to see us change now or needing to see us change now. And then for the business, it was, hey, we need to go fast and go further faster, but we don't know if you guys can help us get there. So really ramping to build trust within the TA team, which was challenging. And then within the business. And I think some folks in TA were probably, I believe, looking at me as if like, you're a new guy coming in, kind of, saying all these things and I think really needing to understand who I am as a leader. And I love the people who I get to work with.
Yeah.
My heart is tied to the people. I put on my LinkedIn profile, people first leader. John Maxwell has this saying that, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so I'm big on that. Now I had to operate a little bit differently coming into this environment because there was this like urgency to see change pretty quickly. And so I didn't really get a chance to like spend as much time developing relationships before having to make change. I had to develop relationships while making the change. And that was a big challenge because that trust, right, as it's being earned in drops, people aren't really seeing who I am and understanding my leadership heart. They're just feeling the change. It's a who moved my cheese sort of moment without knowing what my heart was as a leader.
Well, look, Steve, so Jerry and I have been talking to a lot of leaders whom we've known for a long time, who found themselves in transition recently within the last year or so, but who are now landing into these new roles, new companies, sometimes completely different industries, different focus, different structures within the org. And they're asking us, in those conversations, where do I start? How do I tackle this? What's the first thing I should look for? That sort of thing. So I guess let me turn the question to you. If we're asking for you to give advice to TA leaders, right? So based on your own experience, what would you tell these TA leaders who are looking to similarly enhance either their team's performance and perception within their org, or coming in from scratch and kind of like you did, have to come in and say, "Ooh, it's time for us to do a refresh or a rebuild"? What would you tell them?
I think just understanding the landscape, right, of what's going on. So the business perspective, stakeholder perspectives, and then the team's perspective, right? So I know that seems really simple and kind of a Captain Obvious sort of moment, but I think that's so important because knowing the business's perspective, right? If you understand the team's perspective without the business's perspective, we're fighting an uphill battle, right? We're swimming against the grain, and it's a heavy current. Because without really truly understanding the business and what they need and what they feel is going on, or whatever their perception is, then we can't solve whatever problems we have or barriers we may have to relationship. And I believe relationship is critical. I operate with 3 R's in talent acquisition: relationship, results, readiness. Like, we build strong relationships, we produce dynamic and phenomenal results, and we improve our readiness in the process. And it's not linear; it's a circle, right? It's cyclical, because each feeds into the other. And so, but relationships start first. I remember a person on my team a while back who said, that you got that all backwards, Steve. It's got to be results first. I'm like, results without a relationship is just a transaction. You're no different than the person you got Starbucks from this morning, who you may never see again, right? Like, that's not, or they may never know your name, right? Unless you're like a regular in that Starbucks every, twice a day. And so that's not us, right? We want to build relationships, produce great results, and then improve our readiness in the process. So I think, really focusing on understanding the need, building relationships in each of those area stakeholders, the hiring leaders in the business, and then across the team. I think those things are, to me, most critical to really understanding the need, because then after that, you could shape, your thoughts, your plans, your strategy around the specific needs of that organization.
I think you said it earlier too. You talked about a listening tour.
Yes.
And I think fundamentally the first thing everyone needs to do is to shut up and listen to all the stakeholders. And the better your skills in being able to do that and keep your mouth or your tongue tightly, from wagging, you're in better shape, and that's when you start demonstrating you understand.
It's so true, because like, as I was getting feedback throughout the organization, I'm hearing like the real problems that are existing, and it's some, I go back to the team, we talk about it. Those things were really happening, right? It wasn't just hiring manager perception; it was things that were actually going on. And at some point, sometimes we didn't really see that those things were wrong, and they were there. We had some fundamental challenges, right, in some of how we were operating, and then the business had some fundamental challenges in how they were operating. And then we had to really understand, like, how do we address those challenges? How do we address our challenges first? So then we can go back and then start to address the fundamental challenges that the business has, so they can see that we're meeting them halfway and not just saying, hey, here's your problems, why don't you guys go fix this while we're trying to fix our problems. It's like, no, let's solve for what we know we need to solve for. So then we can go back to the business and start having, conversations about some of the things that they could be doing differently or better to improve the entire hiring process.
I love it. All right. So look, Steve, we've talked about a number of books.
Yes.
Over the last 40 minutes or so. So we take every guest out with this question at the end of the show. It's coming.
Yeah.
You're going to write a book on the work that you've done so far, right? Over at BECU and all the lessons learned that brought you to where you are today. What would the title of the book be?
I think it would be Relationships, Results, Readiness. I'm not a great book title writer, but I think it would cover, I'm not great at titling books, but what I think it would cover, all those 3 things I think are vital in the TA space.
Okay.
Relationships are critical, right? In everything we do. I remember at Lockheed saying that, if I were to really dumb down the recruiter role, it would be relationship management and rec management, right? Manage your relationships really well, hiring manager candidate, and then manage your requisitions really well, dispositions, all those sorts of things, right? Which feed into managing the relationships well. And so that's just like oversimplifying the role, relationship management and rec management. But if we can manage our relationships really well, there's something like, one, it gives you grace when you fail, right? And we're gonna fail, so we need a little bit of grace from time to time. But then 2, it opens the door for healthy conflict, right? So we can engage in conflict differently in a healthy manner that allows us to confront some of those behaviors, right, that hiring managers have that need to be addressed. But without the relationship, the hiring manager may get more defensive because we're just a transactional individual that they're working with, right? Get a rec, fill a rec sort of mentality. And we don't need to be that. We need to build the relationship so we can have that trust and credibility to be able to speak into what they're doing. And so, I think those things are super important. The relationship is key. The results piece, of course, Another John Maxwell thing is where he talks about 5 levels of leadership, and that's position, permission, production, people development, and the pinnacle, right? So the third level is production. Like you can't get to the other levels of leadership without production. That's results, right? Like we could sit there and say, I've got the position, you've given me permission. That's the relationship, right? We're in position to do well. It's just a friendship if you're not producing results. And that's not why we're here at work. We can build friendships at work, but it's an ancillary benefit of being at work. It's not the primary goal. We need to produce the results. And so results are critical. And then the readiness piece is important because, growth mindset, right? We have to constantly find ways and always improve, constantly find ways to, retool and improve and, take the lessons and be able to drive those lessons and forward to be able to make changes and improvements in how we actually, drive forward and produce the work. So relationships, results.
And I think your subtitle is in that order. We're in that order. These are in the correct order. And then the subtitle is, who you are.
You know who you are. You know who you are.
All right, Steve, last question for you. Who are you going to give the first signed copy to? Present company excluded. Who gets the first signed copy?
Yeah, because you guys are awesome. So I would say my wife. I say my wife. I mean, she's the most amazing person in my life. She's the most influential, the most supportive person. I said I missed our first wedding anniversary when I was in sports management. And my brother, my sister-in-law, and her parents took Taj, my wife, out for dinner that night. And so she's never hung that over my head, never been upset about it. She's always been supportive. And I learned plenty of lessons from her. She's much smarter, absolutely better looking. And so, yeah, she'd get this first signed copy for sure.
I love it. You're a good man, Steve White. Look, we're glad to have you on. It's always great to see you. I love that you're on our nonprofit board, and I just love getting to hear and talk to you about all the work and the change that's going on at BECU. And I got to tell you, we love every one of the team members we've met. They're great, even though we've known Marvin for ages. He's still great, and we love all of them.
Yes, we appreciate you guys. I appreciate the CXR community and everything that you guys are doing for us. I mean, we had someone attend. I don't know if I can insert this right here, Chris and Jerry. We had someone attend the meetup in Kent Hepfinger, that one of the leaders on the team, attend the meetup in Denver, and just was absolutely blown away, right? And it's his first CXR meetup. We've got another one, Dan Watts, who's our operations TA ops person, who's going to Michigan. So the team is really excited about the platform, really learning a lot, and the community has just really been a help to us as we work to. It was a priority of ours last year, right, to build talent acquisition capabilities. So connecting with CXR really helped us do that. So I know that's not this wasn't planned, but I wanted to share that for sure because it has been a huge help to our team.
Well, we appreciate that. And I think you guys get a hat tip. We just, you probably haven't seen it, just came out yesterday, 22-page overview summary of the 3 days on campus. We kicked that out yesterday, so you can grab that. But I think we got a hat tip in there, so it's good stuff. All right, Steve. Well, we're going to let you go. You gave us a whole hour, so we're super grateful for it. But we're going to let you get back to it, and to everybody else, we'll see them next week. No, we won't. We're not here next week. We're actually for it, so we'll see you the week after, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
All right. Good stuff, man. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody later.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram @careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.